that dusty guitar in your closet, the gym membership you haven't used since February, the novel sitting half-finished on your laptop. They're all victims to the same force that breaks down uranium in nuclear reactors. Your motivation is literally radioactive, decaying at predictable rates whether you're learning Spanish or training for a marathon. Today, we're talking about why this decay is inevitable and how to build systems that work with it instead of against it. We all like to have motivation, but motivation is hard.
It is hard.
It doesn't seem to last very long.
Typically not.
No, and it seems like in order for us to do anything that's worthwhile for us, we need to have motivation.
That's right.
You have like that, rah, let's do this thing. But that doesn't really work all the time.
Oh, a lot of people want motivation, or they think motivation should last forever. But it, as we all find out, it doesn't. And
sure doesn't.
I always compare motivation to radioactive material. It's probably a really bad comparison, but the point is, when something becomes radioactive, the state of being radioactive is very strong at first,
right.
But naturally over time it decays or diminishes or reduces over time. And the same thing that's the same way with motivation. It starts out really strong at first, but over time it diminishes. And so that's kind of what I thought would be interesting to talk about.
Yeah, the initial part is the rah, like, going to a rally, going to those motivating seminars and stuff that we always go to.
Right.
They're exciting. Right. You could just run through a freaking brick wall and no one's going to stop you.
Yeah.
But then literally 24 hours later.
Well, a lot of things are geared towards sparking motivation. Church services are motivating. People go to church on Sundays and they leave feeling really jacked up or excited or about having worshiped or whatever they learned.
Mm-hmm.
But then they find out the next thing Monday morning that motivation has dissipated or disappeared.
Because real life steps in.
Well, real life steps in,
yeah.
But our brains aren't geared to sustain motivation forever.
Yeah.
So the question I wanted to pose is what if motivation isn't something you lose because you're weak-willed, but because it's something that's designed to fade over time? So if we look at motivation for everybody, that's universal. For everybody across the board, it diminishes for everybody. There's not a single person that has motivation that stays constant. And so
I've never heard that before. Motivation can be, what if it's designed to fade?
Yeah. Yep, it's designed to fade, and it's not the way our brain works is it's not designed to sustain that high state of motivation all the time. So think of motivation as something that is meant to get us going, not something that's meant to keep us going.
Sure,
it's a starter. It's not a sustainer. So think of another way to look at it is you like grilling. A lot of people like grilling.
Darn right.
The original way of grilling before all these different high-tech grills, before the Traegers, before the wood pellet grills, before all those, was charcoal briquettes, right?
Right.
The old Weber, the old Weber bowl,
the old trusty.
Yeah, but when you would grill using charcoal, you wouldn't just pile up the charcoal and then throw a match on it, right? Because it wouldn't start.
It's not motivated to start.
It's not motivated to start.
Yeah.
So what do you do? How do you get it to start?
Add some liquid motivation on that sucker.
You add starter fluid.
Indeed. Sometimes a lot.
Sometimes a lot. A lot just for fun. But you don't need a lot. But it's that the starter fluid is designed to get the fire going, to get the grilling process going.
Yeah.
It is not designed to sustain the fire over time. So if you spray a bunch of lighter fluid on, you throw a match on it, you'll notice that lighter fluid burns out pretty quickly. The point of that, so if you compare lighter fluid to motivation, its point is to get things started, and then the rest of the grilling process continues from there, right?
Sure.
So at some point, the grill doesn't need the motivation of the starter fluid to continue the cooking process, but it's just to kind of get things moving.
It's got those chemical reactions going on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the whole idea, or that's how motivation works for us as well. And come to think of it, I guess the grilling analogy might be better than radioactive material, but regardless.
Still works.
So the other thing I want people to think about is motivation has a half-life. And are you aware what a half-life is?
Yeah, half-life is a period of time where, say, a medication,
Yeah.
where after medication is used, it that half of its effectiveness, like 50% of its effectiveness has dissipated. Is that right?
So if we say, and I'm just pulling a number out of thin air here, if we say a medication that you take has a half-life of 3 hours, that means it takes 3 hours for the level of medication in your bloodstream to be reduced by half.
Mm-hmm.
And that's usually the point at which it starts to lose its effectiveness, relatively speaking. So that's what a half-life is. So anytime that the half-life is referred to the amount of time it takes for something, whether it's a medication or anything else, it takes the time it takes for that substance or that thing to be reduced by half.
Okay, sure.
And so we can kind of apply that to the field of psychology and specifically motivation. That is, motivation spikes when you start something new, but it inevitably decreases over time. Now, some of us are able to sustain motivation for longer periods of time than others. That's probably true. But the universal principle is that motivation will decline at some point in time. And the key is then, what do you do? How do you plan for that? So if you know that it's happening and you know it's going to happen, right. What do you do to counteract it? That's always the $1 million question, so to speak. But what the research shows is that the idea of novelty, the brain rewards novelty. The brain rewards something new and exciting by giving us a dopamine hit. And if you think of dopamine, like when we're excited to do something, the brain releases dopamine into our blood, into our system, and that gives us that feel-good feeling, so to speak, or that sense of reward. But dopamine can't stay coursing through our veins forever. At some point, it's going to decrease, and that's when our initial excitement phase, when our dopamine levels go down. And so dopamine has a half-life, right?
Right.
The amount of time it takes to be reduced in our system.
Sure.
And that's why that initial motivation or excitement fades for whatever activity that we're excited to do, whether it's something at work, something at home, a new project you're starting.
Yeah.
Motivation for all of us has a half-life. It's going to reduce.
What do you think would, I mean, this is a side note, but what do you think would happen if your body if you always have that dopamine being coursing through your veins, never stops? Like what happens to your body?
Well, I don't think we'll ever really know the answer to that because that's not the way our brains are geared. But what I would argue to guess is that our bodies would normalize that experience, and then it would be less effective.
And you wouldn't really notice
right.
it.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like someone that takes a lot of caffeine, someone that has a significant caffeine addiction.
Caffeine
the
doesn't really
caffeine
affect
actually
me.
doesn't really affect them.
Right.
From the standpoint of it doesn't feel like it gives energy. So the person that takes caffeine all the time, they're taking it essentially to avoid the crash that causes from caffeine withdrawal. And I think the same thing would happen if we're always on a dopamine high. At some point, it's not going to have the intended effect.
It's probably similar. It's probably true with drug addictions too.
Yeah, exactly. Or, our compulsive doom scrolling on social media is a common thing. People are doing that because they're searching for the next dopamine hit that they get from some kind of interaction online. And so we actually do that a lot every day because obviously dopamine makes us feel better. But that's really what the research shows is that, again, the brain, our motivation fades because biologically our brains reward novelty, but then what it does is it adapts very quickly to that new sense of excitement. That's why our motivation changes. Psychologically, there's reasons why motivation fades. For example, so we talked about the biological reason, which is the brain rewards something new and exciting by giving us a dopamine hit. We can't continuously feed ourselves, or we can't continuously have a dopamine hit over and over.
Right.
So our brain and our systems then adapt to that rather quickly. But psychologically, there's other reasons why motivations might fade. For example, say you're starting a new project at home and you think you're going to do really well on it, but you have an unrealistic expectation, whether it's a landscaping project, for example. Say you're all gung-ho to start that in your backyard, and it's going to be beautiful, it's going to be perfect, and you're so sure that you're going to be good at it that you don't even hire anyone to consult with you to help you out with it. Most people are going to find very quickly that they're not cut out to engage in such a project, and so the motivation for that's going to hit very quickly. There's an individual I'm aware of who had a similar experience in which that person was going to start a very large landscaping project in his backyard. And this person found out very quickly that he bit off more than he can chew. And so suddenly the novelty of that situation faded, and the motivation for that situation faded very quickly because of those unrealistic expectations. And the landscape material have been sitting out in the backyard for years.
Was this you, Josh?
No, it was not me. It was not me. I can promise you it was not me. But
you would have recognized right away, like, this is not my cup of tea. I'm just going to hire this out.
I would have never bothered.
Right.
In the first place, because I know I would have any ideas. So that's an example. You have unrealistic expectation. We're going to realize really quickly that we set ourselves up for failure, and our motivation is just going to disappear.
Yeah.
Another reason our motivation fades is if there's unnecessary friction in whatever it is that we're trying to do. So if what we're trying to accomplish, there's too many roadblocks in our way, there's too many barriers to overcome, a lot of times that will reduce our ability to sustain forward progress and motivation. So being able to remove that friction and those barriers is really important.
I would say that we had experienced that with this building that we're in now. At least I did, anyways. It took us over a year from signing the purchase agreement to actually closing at it, because we had so many zone issues.
Yeah, that was a unique process.
And all these public meetings we had to have. At some point, we were just kind of like, do we really want to keep trying on this? Is this like a square peg in a round hole situation? But we liked this building so much. Like, no, this is where we just felt like we just knew this is where we were supposed to be. And so we it was a grind towards the end, but we made it happen for sure.
Yep. And so there's a lot of friction with that, and there was a lot of lack of visual process. But it was important to
there's no process. It was just taking steps back all the time, it seemed like. Yeah.
Yep. So there's biological reasons, there's psychological reasons why motivation fades, and then there's also environmental reasons why our motivation can fade. What's an environmental reason? Things like distractions. We're trying to focus on one thing, but we're distracted by other things that are pulling our attention away. That can extinguish that sense of motivation, the ability to kind of move forward on things. Or here's another key one, the absence of support. So if you're always going at it alone, it's very difficult to sustain motivation over time. And the reason for that is accountability is really important. So the support on the sidelines, so to speak, or somebody holding you accountable for what you're trying to accomplish is a big piece. And if that's absent, it's very easy for the motivation to be lost. So motivation fades over time, but there's also that danger of relying then on just motivation alone. If the assumption is that we're going to work on something or try to achieve something so long as we're motivated to do it, we're essentially setting ourselves up for failure, because no one can sustain motivation, or nobody is motivated perpetually.
Right.
People appear motivated perpetually, and there's a reason for that, but we'll get to that in a minute. But if we solely rely on that feeling of motivation and excitement to get things done, we're never going to find success long term, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah.
So what are some examples on relying on motivation alone? We've talked briefly before about how much I hate New Year's resolutions for that very reason.
They're the worst.
Because we're all motivated at the beginning of the year to do something and to make a big change, because we're flipping the paper calendar to the new year. But we know the research, and everybody knows that New Year's resolutions, the percentage that are actually completed is minuscule compared to the number of them that there actually are.
Right.
We've all had projects that we've abandoned before. If I always say if the number of people that actually had a gym membership went to the gym would be packed all the time.
Right.
But, that's another example of relying on motivation alone. We're motivated suddenly to to make a change in our physical health, and it may be well intentioned. So we go out and get a gym membership, and we go once or twice, and then never go again.
Right, because
So-
you didn't see a dramatic change,
Right.
where you got a little sore.
Yep.
You know.
Yep. So again, the key is like motivation is a spark, but it's not a sustainable energy source. So the same way we talked about the lighter fluid for the grill before, that lighter fluid provides the spark, which gets the flames going. But it's not a sustainable energy source. The charcoal is the sustainable energy source. So if we're relying on lighter fluid rather than charcoal over time, metaphorically speaking,
Right.
we're not gonna be able to sustain our achievement or what we're trying to accomplish.
Sure.
And that goes for anything, whether it's with relationships, with your personal life, your personal goals, work, professional life. If we just rely on that feeling of motivation to keep us going, it's not going to be successful. So that the question then is, well, if we can't rely on motivation, then what do we do? And what I would argue is that we need to have this idea of systems versus feelings. We need to have feelings or a desire to work on something or to move towards a particular goal that we have or
Sure.
idea or
Right.
project or whatever you want to call it. It's important to have that feeling, because if we aren't interested in something, if we don't have that passion for something, well, then we're never going to really be able to be motivated anyway. So there has to be that initial spark, but you also have to have the discipline and the structure to keep us moving after that spark fades. I talk with people a lot about when they have plans, when they have ideas. I said, that's great. Let's talk about those plans and ideas, but I want to talk about them not just right now, but I want to talk about them where you're at 3 months from now, meaning what are you going to do once the novelty of the situation is gone? How are you going to sustain this over time?
Right.
And that's a piece that a lot of times we don't always pay attention to, because we like to assume that we're always going to be motivated and always going to be excited to do something, but the fact of the matter is we're just simply not going to be.
How do we keep on task without the ability to stay motivated?
Well, you have to, and generally speaking, you have to anticipate it, meaning you have to anticipate that your motivation is going to go away. And that is when you have to plan for that. You don't want to plan for the motivation necessarily. You want to plan for what are you going to do when the motivation inevitably goes away. We don't need help in the moment when we're excited to work on something, motivated to work on something. We don't really need any help getting going then, because the motivation is the spark that gets us going. What we need to focus on is, okay, a month from now or tomorrow or next week, when I don't want to do this, what systems am I going to have set up in place that will enable me to keep going?
Sure.
And the research shows is that if we have action that precedes motivation, the research shows that progress often will reignite that sense of motivation anyway, because it gives us a sense of accomplishment of having done something, even though we didn't want to in the moment. So that's one big key, is again to start building systems that you can rely upon when you're not feeling motivated. What do I mean by systems? I just simply mean what is a routine, or what action are you going to take when your motivation is distant or is not there?
Sure.
And being able to stick to it. A couple ways that we can. So how do we? The question then is, how do we build systems? They don't need to be complicated. There's a concept that I call as implementation intentions, and that is, if X happens, I'll do Y. So if my motivation to work on what I'm writing goes away, then I'm going to do this to get myself over that hump.
Sure.
Whether it's go to a different environment or take a break, whatever it is. But it's kind of setting up a structure. So if that happens, because it will, if motivation goes away, then this is what I'm going to do to keep myself moving forward.
I gotta say, it's amazing how effective just moving to a different location can actually have an impact.
Right.
It just huge.
Yep.
Like a couple of times last week, I had to work from home because we got a new dog. Got a little Doberman named Bentley.
He's not gonna be little for long though.
Oh my gosh, yeah. The breeder said that he's probably gonna be, he's one of the biggest puppies she's ever seen. So like almost double the size, the normal size. And so she thinks that he's going to be about 115 pounds at least. Yeah, just give me absolute tank.
Yeah.
But anyway,
name him Tank.
But yeah, so I had to work from home to kind of dog sit while my wife was gone. And it was incredible how efficient I was at my house, just doing my work. I mean, I was surrounded by far more distractions than I am at the office, but I was like hyper focused. It was great.
Yeah. Yep. So that's a great idea. Is changing environments really is a good motivator, so to speak. The other idea that I encourage people to think about is this idea of habit scaffolding. What is that? So if you think of a scaffold, the whole idea of a scaffold is to slowly build up over time, right? And so habit scaffolding in our lives is essentially small or repeatable actions that are linked to existing routines already. So how can you build in habits that'll allow you to continue to meet your goal? And then you build your habits into your routine that allow you to accomplish what it is you're trying to accomplish when your motivation is gone. A classic example for a lot of us is getting up and going to work every day. We're not always motivated to go to work, right? Especially on a Monday morning when it's storming and raining outside, but somehow we show up here, right? But and obviously we have significant consequences if we don't show up, right? If I don't show up to work, I'm not going to get paid. I'm going to get in trouble with my boss, those kinds of things. But that nonetheless kind of points us to there's a system that we have set up in our society that enables us to make it to work, to sustain ourselves, even when we don't want to.
Sure.
And so if we can translate that idea of building habits and routines and systems in place into our personal lives, we'll be able to accomplish things even when we don't want to. So that's the idea of habit scaffolding. Then another concept for building systems is accountability. And what does that mean? It means having some kind of external check when internal fuel, like our internal motivation, is running low. So what kind of motivators do you have to keep yourself going? Some people use checklists. Some people use other people as rewards. When I was going to graduate school, for example, they had tons of external checks set up for a student writing a dissertation, for example. A dissertation is probably the most difficult thing that most graduate students have to do. And so they don't just send you off on your own. They build in a lot of accountability, a lot of external checks to keep that person moving forward to their goal.
I just gotta say, God bless you for doing the dissertation, because there's no way I would do something like that.
You could do it, especially if you get to that point, and then
I suppose if it's something I'm really passionate about.
It's not. So people get all, and we don't need to go down this rabbit hole too much, but people get all essentially fearful of writing a dissertation.
Sure.
But when you have, like, each dissertation has 3 committee members that keep the person accountable, and so when you have 3 people driving you to do something, you can't help but do it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's the same thing at work or at home.
Sure.
If you have a group of people that are relying on you to get something done, that's an external motivator. That's an accountability check. Oftentimes you either are faced with the internal shame or an embarrassment of letting people down, or you can use that to keep yourself moving forward.
Sure.
So it's the same concept.
Yeah.
It just sounds, it's just a little bit more dramatic as far as the dissertation goes and other things are.
That's true. That's true.
So building systems is important, but then there's also it's also important to also figure out how do we replenish motivation when it's gone. I don't want to down talk motivation too much, because it is important to have it. If we don't have motivation for anything, if we feel, we don't need motivation anymore, that's not really true either. So it's a balance of both having systems and also being able to replenish your motivation when it is gone.
Sure.
And like I mentioned, radioactive material earlier, it can actually be recharged in labs, which is where it becomes much more radioactive again. It can be, quote, recharged. Or if you want to use our grilling analogy, if the fire starts to run low, you can spray a little more lighter fluid on it to get it going.
Heck yeah, there you go.
before putting the meat on, though. You
Sure.
don't want lighter fluid seeping into your
Oh, it's so gross.
steak.
That's so gross.
But in the same way, motivation can also be refueled to an extent. And it's kind of tricking our brain into remotivating ourselves. I always talk a lot about methods for this, like micro rewards. So celebrating small wins. You certainly want to celebrate when you've accomplished something, but you also want to celebrate along the way. And it's important to do that as you're reaching milestones in your journey, whether it's in your personal life, in your relationships. It's important to celebrate those micro wins. For example, people that have been married for a long time, one of the things they found is they do very intentionally is they celebrate their anniversaries. And that's kind of a micro reward when you think about it. They're on this journey married people are on this journey of life together, and then they celebrate their small wins of their yearly anniversary. And it's very important to do that.
Sure.
The other thing we talk about a little bit is this kind of idea of resetting novelty. I talk about novelty a lot because I think it's very important, as our brains really enjoy new things. Now, the comeback to that is, well, I don't like change. Some people don't like change. Well, they say they don't like change, but that's not really true. People that say they don't like change, what they're actually saying is they really like their routine. But our brain craves newness. It likes newness. And so figuring out a way to reset that novelty is very important. So like we talked before, a change of environment is very effective. A lot of highly effective people, some of their strategies often include, once a week, if I need a change of scenery, I'll go to the local coffee shop and sit and work. Is that anything revolutionary? Not really. You're just getting in your car, burning more gas, and then going to a coffee shop and then doing the same thing you would be doing in your office or in your home office.
Right.
But it's that change of environment that can kind of just give you enough novelty to kind of mix it up a little bit.
It's pretty rejuvenating sometimes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or even changing how you your approach to doing things. If you just switch it up a little bit, a lot of times that'll impact the novelty.
Sure.
So, so we have micro rewards, we have novelty resets, and then kind of there's also this idea of purpose reminders. So that is, productivity experts talk a lot about reconnecting with your why. And that's really what a purpose reminder is why are you doing what you're doing? And it's really important to connect our tasks that become mundane to our larger values and identity. So who are you as a person? Who am I as a person? What's our own personal values? What do we find to be important? And then making sure that we're connecting the tasks we do every day to the larger values and larger identities.
Well, and finding your why doesn't necessarily have to be this monumental,
right?
Mount Olympus, thing that you need to climb.
Yeah.
It can be something as I want to make sure that I have more money at the end of the month than save, so I can save a few dollars, or I need to, I don't know.
Here's another way to look at it. There are some individuals out there that are stay-at-home parents, and they are stay-at-home parents for a number of reasons. One, because they feel it's really important. Economically, it's the only way that it can be managed because of ridiculously expensive daycare. But someone that's in a professional role that enjoys serving, that serves others in a professional role, whether it's a therapist or a physician or something, or nurse, and then they transition into being a stay-at-home parent. A lot of times, those individuals struggle with motivation. They struggle with finding value in what they're doing. But an example of purpose reminders for that is if that person's identity is to serve others, they can connect their need for being at home with their kids for a period of time to their larger life purpose of serving others, because in that sense, they're serving their kids at home for a period of time.
For sure.
And so sometimes just a simple mindset shift to connecting mundane, sometimes what appears to be purposeless tasks to a greater identity or value that you have can be very motivating.
Sure.
That
makes sense.
Makes the task seem much more worthwhile.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. So, not to belabor the point, but some takeaways for today. I just want to remind people that all of our motivation has a half-life, and that is very normal. It's not a flaw. So the fact that we're not able to sustain motivation indefinitely, it's not a character flaw that we have. It is the way our brains and our bodies naturally operate.
Sure.
So to combat that, the best way to adjust for that is to then build systems to carry us through when that motivation does run out, because it will. It's just a matter of time.
Right.
In addition to that, it's also important to, quote, top off the tank every once in a while, rather than expecting our motivation to stay full all the time. And like I said, micro rewards, novelty resets, and then purpose reminders are really important. Reconnecting with your why is really important to building that motivation when it's kind of diminished.
Sure.
So in closing, John, motivation will always decay.
Always.
It will always.
That's its design. It's not a flaw. That's what it's supposed to happen.
Yep. So know what's going to happen, but what really matters and where the rubber really meets the road as far as getting things done and accomplishing what you want to in life, what really matters is how you manage that decay curve over time. So knowing that motivation is going to diminish, that's great, but now what? What are you going to do to manage that, knowing that it's going to happen?
Sure.
And so I'll leave you with this. You don't need constant motivation. You need systems to survive its half-life.
I like that.
Thank you.
I like that, Josh.
Good
stuff.
Good.
Well, it's always good to learn that, motivation can be fleeting.
Yeah.
And I found too that sometimes that just even if you're not motivated, you start to do the thing.
Right.
That in and of itself can motivate you.
Yeah. One of the tricks is always just give yourself 2 minutes to start something.
Yeah.
And if you just say, okay, I'm just going to deal with it for 2 minutes. If I don't want to keep doing it, I'm going to quit. That's usually once you can just kind of get over that initial barrier.
Yeah.
You find that you're actually more capable to continue on than you thought you were.
So go back to your final line.
Yep. You don't need constant motivation. You just need systems to survive its half-life.
And there you have it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Non-Static Podcast. If you want to keep the conversation going, sign up for the Non-Static newsletter at nonstatic.org. And if you or someone you care about is struggling with their mental health, you can connect with us anytime at Inspire Services at inspireservicesllc.com. Take care, keep moving forward, and as always, enjoy the journey.